All right, let's break down a really big idea. Today, we're diving into a single document from 2014 that basically proposed a completely new kind of internet, the Ethereum White Paper.
Okay, right out of the gate, the paper hits you with its core thesis. Now, this sentence might sound a little dense, but it's everything. It's basically saying, let's give a blockchain a brain. A Turing-complete language means it can solve pretty much any problem you throw at it. Think of it this way. It's the difference between a calculator, which does one thing well, and a full-blown computer that can run any app you can possibly dream up.
And that's really the heart of this whole document. This wasn't just a pitch for another digital coin. Nope. This was the blueprint for a new kind of computer, one that's global, decentralized, and open for anyone to use.
But to really get why Ethereum was such a revolutionary leap, we've got to first talk about the giant whose shoulders it stood on, Bitcoin.
You see, Satoshi Nakamoto's incredible invention was the blockchain, and what it did was solve this huge problem that had stumped computer scientists for decades. How do you get a bunch of people who don't know or trust each other to all agree on a single source of truth, like who owns what, without needing a bank or a big company in the middle? So how do you keep this shared book of records safe and sound? Well, the secret sauce was something called proof of work. It was the engine that made the whole thing go. By making computers on the network solve a really hard math puzzle just to add a new page of transactions, it made attacking the network crazy expensive. It was a brilliant way to secure the whole system.
Now, the white paper talks about this whole system in a really clever way, as a state transition system. That just sounds complicated. All it means is, think of the blockchain like a chessboard. The state is just the current position of all the pieces. A transaction is like making a move. It takes the board from one state to the next. That's it.
And here's a super simple look at that. A transaction is basically just a little machine. You feed in the old state, Alice and Bob's balances, and if everything checks out, it spits out the new state. This simple, powerful idea is the bedrock for literally everything else we're going to talk about.
But here's the catch. Bitcoin was an absolute game changer, for sure. But its programming ability was kept simple on purpose. Remember that calculator analogy? It's amazing at its one job, moving money around, but you can't really use it to build, say, a social network or a game.
And these were the specific roadblocks that Vitalik Buterin zeroed in on. Bitcoin's code couldn't do loops, which makes writing complex programs a nightmare. It couldn't easily check how much money was being sent, it had no memory, every transaction was a one-off, and it couldn't even look at basic data from the blockchain itself. These weren't just small issues, they were fundamental limits on what you could build.
So with all these limitations, what was the big new idea? Well, this is where Ethereum completely changes the game. It moves beyond just a simple ledger and proposes something way, way bigger, a world computer. This was the real aha moment. Instead of having to build a whole new blockchain for every single new idea, what if you could just have one super flexible blockchain that could run any application? A single decentralized computer that anyone, anywhere in the world, could use to build whatever they wanted.
And the tool to make this happen? Smart contracts. Now, the white paper calls them autonomous agents, which is a cool way of putting it, but a better analogy is a digital vending machine. It's just a piece of code that lives on the blockchain. You send it some money, that's your transaction, and it automatically follows its programming and spits out a result. Just like a machine giving you a soda. No middleman needed.
Okay, but wait. If anyone can run any program on this world computer, what stops someone from writing an infinite loop and just grinding the whole thing to a halt? The genius solution was gas. Think of it like fuel for your car. Every single step a program takes costs a tiny bit of gas. This makes sure that people use the network's resources efficiently, and it makes it way too expensive to attack the system.
And once you have this programmable layer, this world computer fueled by gas, well, the floodgates just open. The original paper wasn't just describing a technology. It was painting a picture of a whole new universe of things you could build with it.
The low-hanging fruit, of course, was finance. Suddenly, you could create your own currencies or tokens that live on top of Ethereum. You could build incredibly complex financial instruments, automated savings accounts, even digital wills that execute themselves. These were things that were just flat out impossible on Bitcoin.
But the vision went so much further than just money. The paper talked about entirely new ways for people to organize themselves online, with something called Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, or DAOs.
I mean, think about that for a second. Organizations with no CEOs, no bosses, just code running the show. It even sketched out ideas for decentralized versions of things like Dropbox or Amazon Web Services.
And honestly, some of the most mind-bending ideas had nothing to do with finance at all. The paper imagined new systems for identity that could change how we prove who we are online. It talked about secure online voting, and even things like prediction markets that could tap into the wisdom of the crowd. We're talking about reimagining foundational pieces of society here.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? When you boil it all down, what's the lasting legacy of this document?
Here is the most important thing to remember. Ethereum was never meant to be just one single application. It was designed from day one to be a platform, a kind of digital bedrock, a shared foundation that thousands of other applications could be built on top of, all of them benefiting from the same shared security and economic system.
And you know, the paper's conclusion says it all perfectly. The whole point was to be open-ended by design. It wasn't about solving one specific problem. It was about giving everyone else the tools to solve 1,000 problems, including many we haven't even thought of yet. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This incredible vision was laid out way back in 2014. And when you look around today at DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, so much of it was first sketched out in this one paper. The question for all of us now is, how close are we to actually realizing that dream? And how much further do we have to go?